timer.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
I got my car back. I was off the rails for a week.
Off the rails. Yeah, I heard that there's been some trains derailing around the nation. I guess they're off the rails.
And so has the third chair. We're off the rails.
That yours wasn't even a joke.
No, it wasn't. Well, at least the turtle's alive. Yeah,
unless he had a train fall on him.
I was worried he had to go across that rail crossing.
Got to get there.
You know, he doesn't move very fast.
Is he still crossing it?
Yeah, he is.
Lucky there's not many trains off of that railroad.
Yeah, at least in our part of town.
Yeah, I wonder if he'll make it to before the end of the episode.
I hope so.
Jeez.
Because he assures us by two-way radio that he's speeding along.
Did he use his shell phone?
I did. His shell phone.
Oh man. I got to put Doug ahead of you, and he only had one joke.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well,
Sabermetrics.
Yeah. Okay, it's not about sword fighting, not sabers.
It's not a Star Wars thing.
Yeah.
Luke, what is sabermetrics?
So sabermetrics study of why baseball wins.
By why the team wins.
Yeah, you heard Jackie Robinson, right?
Yeah.
Okay. First black ball player.
Was he the first?
Well, in this century.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, to play...
he really broke the barrier.
The National American, and he broke the barrier. The guy who scouted him, mentored him, and it was his general manager was Branch Rickey, and Branch Rickey was a very innovative person.
Mm.
In the 1940s, he wrote an article saying walks are underrated and are good because it gets you on base without having to swing, and you get on and getting on base is the most important stat on offense. So this guy was like the leading baseball guy of his day. Other general managers didn't pay attention to it. So you go ahead, and then you get these guys who studied the stats and everything. They started saying walks are...
the reason you win? If you get enough walks?
Walks would lead to on-base percentage instead of batting average, and it's the most important offensive statistic.
Really? So you can predict whether a team will win by...
It's by one of the best predictors. I mean, guess what's the first best predictor?
If you have a lot of home runs?
You mentioned it last week. If you score a lot of runs.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah, but the best way to get runs was to get people on base.
So, I guess the statistic exists for the league now. If you score an average number of runs, you're more than likely to win the game. What's that number? If you score 7, you're most likely to win, even if it's 7-5.
I would say 5.
5, because there's less hits and less runs in general.
Yeah, I would say 5. You're going to win in about... someone's figured this out, but I would say 5 runs. You're going to win about 70-80% of your games.
I think that's right.
Yeah. And then in the 70s, this guy working at a pork and bean factory doing security.
At a pork and bean factory.
I was thinking the pork and beans had something to do with winning.
Yeah.
Running around the bases.
He was bored at night.
Winding.
so he figured out things on baseball statistics. And the guy happened to be a good writer, and he wrote books. And he said on-base percentage is most important. And there were other guys around at this time also saying this thing. And there were other books. And this guy, Bill James, he was probably the best writer among them. And he became the most famous. And he says... Yeah, and there was an organization called SABR. It's a national organization, and it's a Society of Baseball Research, and it's for people to get together. They didn't actually... They study stories and stuff like that. They didn't really study statistics as much, but he named sabermetrics after them.
Wow, well... So
he goes along, and he becomes semi-famous, and the baseball people don't listen to him. They say he doesn't know anything. And then, but the youngsters start to pay attention to this, and they grow up and they start working in baseball, and they start to use this stuff. And guess what happens? Moneyball.
Moneyball, the movie.
Somebody writes a book about it, Billy Bean, because Billy Bean says, "How come I was the number one draft choice, and I failed, and Lynn Dykstra was like 5'8", and nobody wanted him, and he became a star." And so he studied it, and he found out about on. That's the movie Moneyball is about him using on-base average as an advantage because he's a poor team.
No.
That's about poor teams and rich teams.
So,
Now people have, all the teams have analytical people in their office trying to look for whatever advantage they can get from statistics, from spinning the ball more, using more pitchers. That's one thing Milwaukee Brewers have done very well. They lead the league. I don't like the strategy, but it's been effective.
So if you have a team, say for instance, that primarily is composed of people that hit singles and doubles, can that team do as well as one that has more of a mix of people that also regularly hit home runs and triples?
It's difficult.
That's why I asked it.
Yeah, it's possible because you could get that team stealing bases. The St. Louis Cardinals in the 80s, they had pretty solid on-base percentage. They did not have that many big hitters in their lineup. One year they had Jack Clark, but what they were successful is they got on base, they would steal, they would get enough runs, and they played defense well. And one of the things Bill James wrote is speed is one of the things you use both on offense and defense, because if you're out in the outfield and you're fast and you're quick, you can get the more balls. So they always had solid defensive teams, which helps the pitcher. And so they had the best fielding shortstop of all time, Ozzie Smith, on the team.
So is there sort of a general rule, like if someone's on first base, a runner's on first base, and someone hits a double, is it generally accepted that the guy will definitely get to third, sometimes get to home, occasionally get caught and not get anywhere? What's sort of the general thinking? Like with the person,
you would make it to third, depending where it's hit, who's on the outfield. He has a third base coach telling him whether to run or not.
So he doesn't have to analyze that in real time.
The runner is, he does a lot of the good runners will do some analysis. The really good ones, the third base coach, not everybody
listens to the third base coach.
not everybody listens, and not everybody's a really good runner, so they should listen to it. The third base coach has to make that decision. They can see more of the field.
I mean, I guess if you have Ricky Henderson coming around third versus you have Mark McGwire running.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
If ball hit to right field, are more likely to score than a ball hit to left field, because left field is nearer to home plate and nearer to third base. So it's a shorter throw. Right field, you're way out there. Roberto Clemente. We'll talk about him.
Maybe.
He was a right fielder. I'll tell you about him.
Yeah.
After this break.
Roberto Clemente.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the third chair. Our turtle is moving his way towards the studio.
I think
at
he's slower
full speed.
I'm getting closer.
Slower than Mark McGuire.
He's slower than Mark McGuire. No small feat. And we left off, you'd mentioned Roberto Clemente, which is actually the name is associated with the trophy. So tell us about Roberto Clemente. Why was he important to the game, and what's his contribution?
He was important in a lot of ways. He was one of the first. There was a small group of them, but about a decade after the first blacks came, they started searching like the Caribbean, and he was Puerto Rican, and he was a black Puerto Rican, and he was one of the first like Caribbean players. So now they spoke Spanish as their original language, and so and when they spoke English, it was English with a language. So he had to deal with, that was a whole nother group that's coming in trying to make their mark, and and there's like, oh no, these guys don't even speak English, I mean, it was kind of the attitude too. So they had to face their own prejudice and stuff. And so he was one of the leaders with that. He was also humanitarian. He did a lot for the people of Puerto Rico. He would play winter ball, but him and his wife did a lot of charity work and things like that. And
As a matter of fact, that's how he died.
Right.
In a plane crash.
There were earthquakes in Nicaragua, and they loaded the plane, and they might have overloaded it. And it wasn't the world's greatest plane. It was something they could get a hold of. And he was on the plane, and either the weight or the plane itself or something, the plane took off. It did not go far, and it crashed in the ocean.
And he was killed.
And this was like New Year's Eve. He was going out to help these people, because that's what he did. I mean, he did a lot of that. I mean, he would do it in person. I mean, he wasn't like one like to sign his name and like go to a show or something. He got real involved with the charity.
Personally involved.
Yeah, things like that.
And
that's
so
why the award.
They named an award after him. What's that for?
Just be charity work.
They call it good sportsmanship or
something more off the field, more charity,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you have to be a good sportsman, but more charity, doing stuff for other people, running charity, and I mean, so a lot of these players do a lot of good in the community, and some of them get the Roberto Clemente Award, and it's always nice because the players know who Roberto Clemente is, and I mean, he had his arm. He was out in right field, and I just saw him on TV. But he played the World Series in '71 and a couple of years before he died, and his throws from right field were like magical. I still remember him. I think he liked to show off some, because the guy wasn't going to go to third. He had a single to right, but Clemente would still throw that ball like all the way to right field in the third baseman's mitt, and like
that's impressive. That's a long throw.
That's a long, and there's guys can do it, but I mean, Clemente was just so fun to watch do it. And
now another term I heard associated with him, and I don't know baseball well enough to know what it means. They said he was a good contact hitter. That must have a special meaning.
He hit for average WAR, and he hit for power. So, and he didn't walk that much, but he had enough average to make up for it. And he had a lot of doubles and triples.
So
their park was bigger too, so he wasn't a home run, but he still had power. But he contacted. He liked to swing at pitches and hit the other way. And he's one of those guys who, you would have troubles like shifting on him, because he'd hit left field, center field, right field. He's one of those.
So just getting a hit was more important than trying to get a home run.
Yeah.
So if
And,
it were a
there
hittable
were-
pitch, he wasn't going to let it go by. He was
Right.
more likely to take
Right.
a whack at it.
Right. And another player, and Ted Williams, I don't know if you had him on your list, but
No.
but Ted Williams, like one of the all-time great hitters, and he would have had better records, except he went to World War II, and he was a fighter pilot in Korea, and crashed his plane, and then he got sent back home because he got vertigo in his ears when he flew. You know, he couldn't pilot anymore because of the...
No, because everything would spin.
Yeah.
That would be a problem.
But, I mean, so he lost 3 years to World War II and almost 2 years to Korea War, and he still had one of the great hitting records of all time. And this shows you the history. He went to the All-Star game and all these All-Star, and he was pretty old at the time, like 80 years old. They wheeled him off and up in a wheelchair to home plate. All the players ran out to go stand by him and be with him because they knew, you know, what a great hitter he was and how he served his country. And it was thank you. And they just wanted to be near Ted Williams. And this was players. I mean, these are the guys making millions. They're superstars in their own right, the all-star players. And they just did this, like, at the spur of the moment. It's like, hey, we want to be out there and thank Ted and be with Ted, you know. Just,
Now, let me change directions a little bit. Babe Ruth. I mean, I know there's a Babe Ruth candy bar, and there's always pictures of Babe Ruth pointing his bat.
he tried to sue on that and he lost.
Oh, did he? Yeah. Well, you know, it's interesting. I don't know if this is true. I mean, obviously, Babe Ruth was a great player. And I heard one of the things that he was known for is, I guess, after the World Series around 1919, there was controversy or cheating or scandal or something, and he sort of got baseball going again after that. He was played a big role in that.
Yeah, Babe Ruth came up as a pitcher. He was a pretty darn good pitcher, and he would hit. And one of the things he had an advantage of is you usually don't pay much attention to the players hitting, and he liked to swing hard and stuff like a lot of guys do. But he was like the only one doing it in those days, and you know, and he played with it because he was a character. I mean, he was, if you read a biography of Babe Ruth, it's very interesting. Don't watch any of the movies; all of them stink.
Oh, well,
but
you know,
he and what he did is he's like, he liked to hit home runs, so he swung hard, and then so he broke the home run record as a pitcher. So they started playing him, and he could hit. And so they started playing him out in the outfield, and they thought, and he says, "Wait a minute, I can't pitch every 4 days and be playing in the outfield all between, because pitching takes a lot out of you."
Oh, sure.
And then he was out carousing at night.
Yeah.
He's kind of famous for that.
Yeah, drinking, and some people complained that he was actually, at least on one level, difficult to work with because of some of his drinking and that. And I don't know how bad it was, or if it was
I don't know.
full
It's hard
blown
to
alcoholism
tell
or anything, but
tell with that. But I mean, he's functioning.
Well, that's what Doug said about you. You're difficult to work with, Peter.
yeah, well, I am difficult to work with.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't. Yeah, that was told in confidence. Strike that, Peter. He said you're wonderful to work with all the time.
Well, let's follow up on Babe Ruth. Another great one, Hank Aaron. Who I guess at one point broke Babe Ruth's record.
Yeah, it's since been broken by Barry Bonds.
Yeah, but he was like the first one.
Controversial with Bonds with the steroids, but
sure.
But Hank Aaron was just a great player. He worked hard. He would hit he never hit 50 home runs, but he would hit 40. His number was 44, and he hit 44 home runs 4 or 5 times. I don't know, it was I got to get to my number on my back or something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just kind of like one of those weird.
And he was also a player.
For 20 years, he was a great player.
And he dealt with some pretty significant racist
when he went
kind
to
of issues.
Babe Ruth's record, and especially Babe Ruth had 714 home runs, which was Joe Friday's badge number on Dragnet.
On Dragnet?
You know why?
No.
Because of Babe Ruth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was a baseball fan.
Oh, wow.
And Hank Aaron ended the 1973 season with 713. And he got a lot of mail, and a lot of it was hate mail across. I remember that, and a lot of my classmates, and it didn't matter. Of course, we grew up in North Dakota, and we didn't have many black people there, but my classmates, we were cheering for him.
Sure. It's inspirational.
I remember him hitting that home run. That was like, we were watching the game. It happened on a nationally televised game, and we were watching that night, and it was like, wow, he could break the record tonight. And in the fourth inning he did, and it was like
amazing.
And it's just, they stopped the game and stuff, but he got a lot of hate mail.
Sure.
And it was like, how dare you break his record and things like that. And a lot of it was racially motivated, and
sure.
A lot of it, people were upset somebody was breaking Babe Ruth's record.
Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about another guy who you either love or hate, and the problem of gambling in baseball. Hi, Peter and Doug here from The Third Chair. We're looking for a win-win situation. We want to keep these videos put up on a weekly basis, and we want to help you succeed with your business adventure.
And we've brought up as a show a lot of important issues that people are interested in, and we brought up a lot of local actors and artists and bringing them forward, which helps them as well as our audience members in finding some of these things.
So there is an email on the screen. Send us a note if you're interested in knowing about some of our sponsorship packages. Welcome back to The Third Chair. We have learned that our turtle friend is now aboard an airplane flying this way and is going to parachute over the studio very shortly.
Is he flying the airplane?
He
I
might
hope
be.
not.
Yeah.
He's kind of near
tiny. He's got these little tiny, like legs. He can barely reach the controls.
Maybe he's like Yoda, who in the fight was doing all the crazy fighting, and at the end he brought his cane and then hobbled on over.
Yeah, I know, that's so great.
Yeah, I don't think he has all Yoda's speed.
No, Yoda was...
When we dropped the cane, he moved pretty fast. He just couldn't move it fast for long anymore.
Yeah, he was getting older. I think he was like 900 years old or something. Well, when we left off, we're going to talk about a problem that probably plagues every sport, and that is the issue of gambling. And a player who was a great player on the field, Pete Rose, and yet I don't think he's been inducted to the Hall of Fame, has he?
He isn't eligible right now.
And that's because of the gambling allegations? Yeah. I mean, certainly on ability, I think he would have been eligible.
He would have made it easily.
Yeah.
But he is declared ineligible as long as he's under suspension, and it was a weird ruling. He talked to the commissioner. He said certain agreements are made. The commissioner of baseball, one of the things was that the commissioner of baseball would not say he gambled. They interviewed the commissioner right after that. He says, yeah, I think he gambled. And then the commissioner died like within weeks after this. The new commissioner took over, and they said, oh, the old commissioner made this deal, but none of it was in writing, and I don't know.
So did Pete Rose actually come out and use the words, I bet on baseball?
He did years later, but then people were wondering if that was true. because
Was he saying it just to get into the Hall of Fame or something, or?
yeah, and get back to baseball because I think he wanted to make money that way. He signs autographs for a living. He has a place in Vegas. He just sits there and
So you can go to Vegas, get the Elvis wedding, and then get a Pete Rose autograph.
yeah, whatever order you want to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
he'll
if
do
you're
the
getting
Pete Rose
married-
wedding, and he'll bet on whether your marriage is going to stay.
That could be too.
Yeah, well,
I don't know, but you know, Pete Rose is. How can you tell he's lying? Because his lips are moving. You know,
yeah.
You could almost say. But I read a biography recently. I read a thing about how him and his lawyer approached the whole thing, and I don't think his lawyer did him any favors.
Well, you know, the whole thing about gambling and that, I mean, I have somewhat mixed thoughts about it. I mean, one is, you know what, if I'm a baseball manager and I want to bet on some hockey game in Europe, I don't see what is as big a problem with that. It's not
probably not as big, but if you bid in the bookie type thing and you're bidding a lot of money, he had a shortage of money. He was living with this guy who's working with the bookie and then also a runner for him.
Yeah,
So
that's a
make
little
the
different.
bid.
So you're actually involved in the operation, and then certainly if
Yeah, he was
you're
near
the
people.
manager of a team
Yeah,
where other people are betting, and you know, you go to your guy,
And then
hey,
he said, I didn't bid on my team to lose, but then it said he could start a starting line, like rearrange his pitchers to win this game he bet on, and then not be as worried in the game he didn't bid on. You know, you can.
so there are
start
variations you can do.
There's variation. I don't know if he did those or anything. I don't know how much he bet on baseball. If he based on baseball, some of the evidence is hearsay from this guy who did the running for him. Not the most trustworthy guy in the world. It's like the steroid users. One of the guys, the main guys who testified against a lot of the players, he was arrested on for attacking his girlfriend or something like that. He told that story, and I tell you what, it was so mixed up. It was like it wasn't believable. The story he told at all, and it's like, how much is he telling the truth? How much are the players telling the truth?
I mean, and I guess
You know, and the thing is, your witnesses aren't the best in this situation because they're
all compromised.
all compromised.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that's the thing with the Pete Roses. They had bidding slips, but those bidding slips, he said some of them were the other guys, and he just wrote them down, and you know, but how guilty he was, it's hard to tell, and I don't think we'll ever know.
Well, you know, and of course the other thing working against him, in my opinion, is that, you know, there is such a thing as a gambling addiction, you know, and it's one thing to say, I'm going to put $20 bet on the basketball game, and another thing when you take your entire take-home salary and bet it all on sporting events and lose everything.
Yeah.
And
you see that with all these new online betting areas.
Oh,
that's where the
probably
thing-
increased it.
yeah,
And that's the thing that's kind of worrisome to me, is the sports are advertising that. You
Yeah.
watch a football game, a baseball game, a basketball game, a hockey game, you see advertising for bidding. And so legal bidding, I mean, through that. But how far away is that player? It's legal from doing legal bidding to like going to Europe and bidding where he can hide his bids, and then going to a bookie.
yeah.
I mean it used to be, like you said, is it okay to bet $20 on a hockey game if you're a baseball manager? And you say, yeah, but could start something.
Yeah,
But now it's like the line's moved way over here, and it hasn't moved too much over there.
Well,
Because you're not that far away from doing something illegal when you move that line so far over.
and even if you haven't done something illegal, there's still the appearance
Yeah.
And I guess, maybe we've lost the idea that there are times when you have to appear squeaky clean.
Right.
That has to be your public image.
That goes back to your question on bidding on $20 on a hockey game. They expected you at that time to be that squeaky clean. Was that too much? Or are we too much but then are we too much the other way? Is there somewhere in between? But sports are promoting gambling.
They are. I see it on Twitter and other social media feeds.
I listen to podcasts. It's every single commercial is how much you can make, but they put their little byline: gamble responsibly and seek help. They don't mean that. They have to say it. But that's not just podcasts. That's regular radio, TV. I mean, and big name
everywhere.
actors now. They get big name actors. To
these people. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah, and so there's so many angles of me as a life coach and working with people with addictions. I think a lot about the gambling addiction, and as hard as it is probably for most of us to believe that we could take our entire paycheck, go to a casino and blow everything and then have no money for rent or food for your family.
That's been done since the 50s.
That's been done from the 50s. It really does
That's been
happen.
done since, the beginning of time. I mean,
yeah,
the
probably.
Bible, they were casting lots and doing all kinds of gambling back then.
And there probably were gambling addicts back in those days. But there's gambling addicts. There's con men. They're all con men. I watched a movie. It's a great movie. The Sting. You ever see that?
Oh, that's a great movie. I was mad because I thought it was going to end differently, and I was yelling at the TV. And then when I saw the actual ending, it was like, oh wow,
that is a great movie. But it's
con men and
suckering people who are gamblers. And, I mean, of course, you're cheering for the people because it's Robert Redford and Paul Newman, but getting back at somebody, I guess, revenge.
Yeah, exactly. Well, when we come back, let's talk about some the whole sort of movement of talented Japanese players in Major League Baseball.
You have no confidence in our turtle. I think he's going to make it in the next segment.
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't. Welcome back to the third chair. Peter's here. Doug's here. We're talking some baseball trivia.
I think
Doug Turtle is
down the
Sammy's
street,
not
so
I can make it.
Not here,
yeah, I think he's down the street.
I have heard that someone has found a catapult, and they're going to make some effort to fly him in.
That's probably the only way he can make it here. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
You'll hear him going, ah!
So,
I hope he survives it.
I mentioned that we're going to talk about the whole phenomenon of Japanese players, but before we do that, What are your 2 favorite baseball movies? If you have 2.
I think one everybody loves is Bull Durham.
Bull Durham? I thought that was about a boxer.
No, it's Raging Bull.
Or a bull rider.
A bull rider.
Raging Bull is about a boxer.
Okay, that was close. That was De Niro.
That's a great movie too.
Yeah.
But Bull Durham kind of shows the day-to-day, the minor leagues, how tough it is. I think it's a movie that probably got more right than other movies about.
Certainly about the idea of how tough it is to be on a farm team or a feeder team.
Yeah, and it's not all glory.
No,
one of my favorite scenes in the movie is he had been at the majors for a week or two, or something. Kevin Costner's character and the other guys. What was it like? And he describes it, and they're like, their eyes, because that's their dream. I mean, they were pursuing it. And their eyes just get so big listening to him, his 2 weeks in the majors. And they're like, envious he had 2 weeks in the majors. Oh, he's disappointed he only had 2 or 3 weeks in the majors.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that actually brings up an issue that's currently going on, that it seems like many farm teams and minor, major baseball, whatever the lower levels are really underpaid. The players are really underpaid and often don't get a living wage or even anything close.
I think they changed that somewhat. I don't know all the changes. They made less teams associated with Major League Baseball so that they can go on their own and get players and see what they can pay and be more competitive within themselves. And that might help salaries, and it leaves less players stuck in the minor league chain. And I think they increased the salary somewhat. I don't know right now if it's enough. I've seen less complaints lately.
Mm-hmm. Well, I looked at one stat.
They said they were going to use some of that money they saved from the lower minor leaguers to supplement the
But a lot of it's still
upper
based
minors
on,
league.
like back when the Sky Sox were here. How many people are coming to watch and lay their money down for the game?
Yeah, the major leagues kind of support. They pay the minor league teams some money to pay some of their players.
Well, I looked at a statistic a couple of years ago. There were teams that were paying $300 a week for their minor league players.
That was probably the lower players.
That was but that I mean, could you do all that traveling and playing and live on $1,200 a month? I guess you could sleep in the bus for you.
The food is, when they're on the road, they get food, and when they come into the clubhouse, there's food there. So they really don't have to worry a lot about food. I think they've kind of helped. This is the low minors. They kind of help them find a place to live. Sometimes with families.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense because that's probably how you could do it.
And then on the off season, they work as much as they can to make money to offset.
Or sometimes, if you're enough of a prospect, you go to these winter leagues. There's one in New England, there's some in California, some in Alaska. Well, Alaska has some sort of
winter league in Alaska.
The manager is a polar bear, and he eats you if you don't play well.
I think they have some winter thing.
Sure,
but
the Timberwolves are paying the polar bears. Yeah,
something or something in Alaska, something with baseball. But New England and California, I think, and then the organization kind of supports you doing that. If you're a bigger prospect, but not everybody's a bigger prospect, and sometimes,
of course, yeah,
it's tough, but it's then you have to work in the off season because this only comes in the on season.
Sure,
and you're not always fit either.
It's not like I guess it's kind of romanticized a little bit. It's actually pretty damn grueling.
Yeah,
are you allowed to say that, Mr. Producer?
Well, if Sammi the Turtle was here, he could say that. But,
yeah, not me.
So it is hard.
Sure.
So my second movie is A Field of Dreams.
Everyone likes Field of Dreams.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
My favorite part of that
Who's in that one? Who stars in that?
Actually, Kevin Costner, too.
Yeah, Kevin Costner. I was going to say, that's no coincidence. Yeah.
Last year, it was last year or 2 years ago. MLB did it right. They played the game on that field. The Yankees played someone, and they had the players run out of the corn. And these are major league players run out of the corn, and they just had like 2,000 or 3,000 people in this farm in Iowa, in the field, run out of the corn, and they played in like older looking uniforms, and they did it right, and that's something nice to happen because often MLB does something, they screw it up.
But wasn't there a baseball movie that involved something like the main theme was the scouting part, and they found some new young pitcher, and I don't.
Yeah, I think it's called The Scout or something.
Yeah, I vaguely remember. It's a more recent movie,
Yeah.
like the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, that might have been the one with Clint Eastwood. I didn't see it, so I don't know.
That vaguely, yeah. And so, what about are there like actual, besides "Take Me Out to the Ball Game"? Are there actually like baseball songs?
There are some.
Like rock and roll, baseball.
Paradise by the Dashboard Light.
Well, I don't think that's exactly about baseball, but there's so
well,
many.
There's baseball in the background.
Yeah, there's reference to it. Yeah,
It's a very non-hidden metaphor.
A non-hidden metaphor. Yeah. That's
everybody.
You know, I think that's probably the most famous that's used baseball in terms of an integral part of a song.
I know. I mean, just the baseball itself. Joe DiMaggio is mentioned in the song Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah, where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio?
Yeah.
Where did he go? I assume
he retired to San Francisco.
Maybe
to the bar.
Yeah, Simon and Garfunkel. Yeah, that's a classic, Mrs. Robinson.
Yeah, so I mean, that's... Okay, those are two I can think of. There's a song, Talking Baseball, where he names a lot of players, and it's Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, and the Duke Snyder, because they played center field in New York in the 50s when the New York was teams were winning all the pennants and World Series in the 50s. And it's a salute to baseball in the 50s, but he's kind of done that song with the same theme for teams and other things. And Terry Cashman's talking, and that's a pretty catchy song, and you hear it a lot at the ball games. Sweet Caroline is one of the most played songs at ball games now.
Oh yeah, I danced to that at the last wedding I went to, but I didn't know that has anything to do with baseball.
It doesn't, but apparently in Boston made it popular, and now it's still like about 20 years ago, Boston made it, and that might not be the original of it. But now you hear it in all the parks all the time is Sweet Caroline, and everybody does that. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Whoa, yeah. So, favorite baseball book and why?
Oh. This guy, Bill James, I told you about earlier, he wrote a big historical abstract. He rated like a bunch of players, and he used it to write about the players in some of those stories, and he kind of wrote a history of baseball, and he called it Historical Baseball Abstract, and he wrote about Babe in like every decade in the history of baseball, and he would like name like the heaviest player, the lightest player, the ugliest player, the most good-looking player.
The ugliest player.
Yeah, he did.
Oh man, that's an award I could win.
But he did have his wife play. He gave her baseball cards, and she picked best-looking players every decade. And he would say what was the biggest controversy of the decade, and he'd talk about that, and then he had this formula for rating the players, but basically it was to tell players. I mean,
this sounds like a book that an auditor would enjoy.
It's that big, but it's great reading. If you want to learn the history of baseball and you know just a bit, this will take you like to the next step. And it's very interesting because a lot of history books remember in school, they're boring. A lot of baseball history books are the same way, but this one's interesting because he does it differently.
Nice,
And that's what makes him a really good writer, and that's why people read his stuff, to find out the other stuff.
So when we come right back, we're going to find out the status of the turtle, as well as we might even get to the phenomenon of Japanese players in the Major League Baseball.
Yeah, we talked a lot about them.
Cut.
Hi, I'm Peter from Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching, and as you know, I do help people with drug and alcohol recovery issues. I love to help people get better, but I also offer a variety of other services, including regular life coaching services. I've helped several people write and finish a book. I've helped a doctor that was in medical school graduate and then get into a residency. And I also actually have quite a background in mathematics, and I do some math tutoring for the GED as well as the ASVAB for those that are thinking about a career in the military. So my contact information is on the screen. Please send me an email or a text, and we can talk about some of these services and how I can help. That's Peter Grigg at Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching. Well, welcome back to the third chair. There's Doug, I'm Peter, and we're going to finally get to the question.
I think I hear some movement upstairs, but I don't know. You know, he's working on it.
Oh, I'm here. Just gotta go downstairs.
Yeah.
I'm being chased by the cats.
You're probably getting chased by the cats. I hear some barking.
I don't think
Since there's no dogs in the building, that's really
Or a turtle, yeah.
So Japanese baseball, it's
A lot of cool pitchers.
Well, then Achiro was a great hitter.
Yeah.
And there was one for the Masuka or something. I can't remember. I got now.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
I'm totally butchering
I don't.
his name.
I think of samurai and kendo and karate and judo when I think of
But
Japan.
they love baseball in Japan.
Yeah,
It
that
was brought in.
amazes me.
You know,
Was that from World War II that the game was brought, or what?
that was before. And,
Oh wow!
And they played baseball, and they had a traveling tour there, and they played the Japanese, and Babe Ruth went, and he was loved. And one of the people who went was Mo Berg, and he took pictures of some of the Japanese bases because he wasn't a very good player, but he was one of the most intelligent people alive, and he took pictures of Japanese bases, which he eventually gave to the CIA, our spies in World War II.
Yeah, Japanese bases. The secret overcoming the enemy.
But I mean, I don't know if they were very helpful, but it was something. But during World War II, the Japanese were saying nasty things about Babe Ruth when they attacked Americans.
Oh,
Because they loved him when he was there, but the World
but
War
now they're
II,
officially enemies.
officially enemies.
Countries are enemies of each other.
But yeah, baseball in Japan has been, they probably, besides the U.S., they probably were the second most one running a league. They had the most history.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
So
So
they had
is
a
there?
home run hitter, O.
Oh,
Yeah, Sarah, I can't say his first name. Darn, I can't say.
so when he hit a home run, people would yell, "Oh no!"
But he hit more home runs than Hank Aaron.
Oh wow, that's no small feat.
But their parks were smaller and stuff, and I don't.
So is that make it easier to hit a home run theoretically?
Right, and I don't think they were as competitive at that time. And that was in the '60s. I think it's moved up quite a bit. And hardest thing about getting players from Japan is the Japan league and country releasing them. I mean, there'd be more, and there's more talent over there.
But there's limits on how many the league will let go to go to different countries.
Yeah, and one of the younger guys, Churro, he's both a great pitcher and a great hitter. He's been doing it for the last 2 years. He was the MVP 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He's amazing to watch.
That's no small feat.
No,
Because, especially since
pretty
pitching
amazing.
and hitting are such different skill sets.
Yeah, I mean, the last one, I mean, people talk to him like, well, Babe Ruth did this, but Churro did this, you know.
So he's in that kind of conversation.
Yeah, I mean, so he is an interesting phenomenon, so.
Oh, what's that? I hear something. I hear something. I hear something. Could it be our guest? I think our guest has arrived.
Sammi is here.
Sammi, we are so glad to see you. Welcome to the show.
Proud to meet
pleasure.
you. I can't wait to talk to you.
Yeah, we're really interested on your thoughts. But unfortunately, I'm looking at the clock. And we have to wrap up for tonight. And thank you for watching. Thank you for being a great guest. And
He was our shortest guest in more ways than one.
As shortest guest in more ways than one. I have never had a guest say fewer things than this turtle. And please like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell notification icon so you can know 2 things. 1, when we've uploaded another episode. And 2, when we'll have Sammi back for more exciting turtle conversation.